This is Meridith Como's version of Assignment 2 tips and tricks. And plus I have a slightly different assignment requirement for Assignment 2, and so you can see how to accomplish that at the end of this video. What I have open on my screen so I can use it for reference is Assignment 2's instructions. I also have AutoCAD, and that's just about all you'll need. If you have Assignment 2's instructions in front of you by hard copy, you should be fine. First step, I'm going to show you how you can use the layer command to quickly set up the layers that are identified in Assignment 2. First tip, when you're creating a new layer, type in the layer name, and then once you've typed in the layer name, if you put in a comma, a second layer will automatically appear. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the layer names that are listed on the handout. So we should have centered chain, cutting plane, dimension, hidden, phantom, section, stitch, and visible. By the way, once you start typing these layers in, they may not go in the order that they appeared in the handout like we just saw. So before starting to add the additional information for the layers after you've typed in all the names, hit the refresh tool, and this will put the layers in alphabetical order. All right, next we want to pay attention to the colors that the layers are being set to. So instead of just doing one layer at a time, under the color column here, look for all the layers that are the same color. So center is blue, and so is stitch. So I'm going to go over here to AutoCAD, highlight center, hold down the control key and highlight stitch, so they're both highlighted at the same time. Click on the color and select blue. So the next one we have cyan, only chain is cyan. So I'm going to highlight just chain and make that cyan. But the next color we come to, we have white. We're going to skip that because it's already white. Black, in my case, because I have a white background, but the white is actually color number 7, and black is also color number 7. It changes color depending on your background. So we're going to skip the cutting plane layer and move on to dimension. Dimension and phantom are both supposed to be magenta. And then we have hidden is supposed to be green. And section is supposed to be yellow. And that should cover all of our colors. So now we want to move to line types. We need to load center, phantom, hidden, and dots. So I'm going to load those all at the same time. I'm just going to highlight the two layers at the top because I know that both of those layers are going to require center 2 line types. So click on the continuous line type under line types column, and then we'll load all the line types we need from the ACAD LIN menu. So I'm going to load center. Hold down the control key and add dot. Hold down the control key again and add hidden and phantom 2. So this loads all our line types we need for the entire project, but the two highlighted layers that I have right now want center 2 as a line type. So I'm going to highlight center 2 and hit OK. And then do the same thing we did with the color. For instance, both phantom and cutting plane are going to have a phantom 2 line type. The hidden layer should have a hidden 2 line type, and the stitch layer has the dot line type. Right now we want to move on to line weights, and line weights are really easy. There's only 2 types. We're going to either leave the layer at a default of 0.25 or we're going to use 0.5. So the ones that we use 0.5 we want to highlight. So we want chain, cutting plane, and visible. Chain, cutting plane, visible. And we want to change all 3 of those at the same time to 0.5. And now our layers are done. Except I am going to ask you guys to add one more layer that isn't in the instructions, and that's for our text that we're going to add to this. So go up to the new layer button, and you'll notice too that whatever layer I have highlighted, it will make copies of exactly that layer's properties to create the new layer. So I probably want to pick a layer that's going to have most of the qualities I want the text layer to have, and the dimension layer comes the closest to it. So I'm going to highlight dimension, hit new, and then rename that layer text. I'm going to give it a color green, and we want to make sure that it's set to the default line type, which it is. So now we're all set, and you want to make sure text shows up in the right spot, so hit refresh. It will rearrange the layers to alphabetical order. Alright, the next step is to go ahead and put in the line work. So I'm going to close the layers, and starting with the center line, so we want to start with the center layer. I'm going to type in L for line and put in an insertion point of 0, 0. Drag the line to the right and put in a distance of 10. The next line should be the chain line, so I'm going to use the L command, hover over the endpoint of the first line, drag up and put in a distance of 0.75, and the length that's specified in the handout, which is 9.313. This is going to be a different command, so we're going to type in DLI for the command instead, and this is short for dim linear. And what this will do is allow you to create a extension line with dimension line. So the first step is to identify your origin point. So we're going to click at the 2 points at the end of the line, and you see that that gives us a dimension with the extension lines. What I want to do is drag up from this endpoint. So I want to highlight the endpoint and make sure that I'm dragging up from it like a O tracking, and put in a distance of 0.75. Now just to double check to make sure that is the correct distance, if we do a DI for distance, and I pick the endpoint of the arrow and then pick the endpoint of the line just before it, which was the chain line, a cutting plane line rather, then you should see a distance of 0.75. So now I'm going to continue with my lines, tracking from the end of the arrow up 0.75. The length of the hidden line is supposed to be 7.9. Alright, once you've filled in all your lines, now we're ready to add the text. So I'm going to switch to the text layer, and we first of all have to create a text style. So I'm going to type in ST, that's short, the alias for style, and I do not want you to use standard for a text style name. It's just a bad habit. We're always going to create a new text style, like so, and I suggest you name your new text style using the initials of your own name, and then the font you intend to use. And the font we're going to use for this text style is called Roman S. So I've used my initials - Roman S. That style shows up over here, but if you notice, we look at the font is still set to Arial. I'm going to click on the down arrow and type in R at the keyboard, which brings us to the R section of the list of the fonts. And then if you scroll down just a little bit, you can find the Roman S.SHS font that we want to use for this assignment. Change no other settings in the text style. You can hit set current and say yes to the pop-up question, and then hit close. So now our current style is the Roman S style that we just created. Now we're ready to type in our text, and there's two types of text commands. You can type in DText. You click your start point, and when it says specify height, we're going to use a general text height that is required for general text. General text is annotation on a drawing, dimensions, and callouts, and that is usually a range of 0.1 to 0.125. For mechanical drawings, you usually use 0.125. So I'm going to type in for specify height 0.125. And then for a rotation angle, I do want the text to write from left to right. So that's a 0 direction for angles. So I'm going to accept the 0 rotation angle that's shown. And then we can type in anything we'd like. And when I hit enter, you'll notice that the cursor goes right below the first line of text. And if I hit enter and then hit enter a second time, we get out of the DText. This DText, notice each line is its own individual entity. So that's one type. This is the DText font. The MText font, or we can use MT for the alias, is a font that gets written into a text editor. So when we write things in this one, you'll notice that once I get towards the end of my boundary box that I defined, the text just automatically goes to the next row. Alright? If I hit enter, it just keeps giving me another row of text. So you don't hit enter to get out of this command. You can hit close text editor or hit escape. Now the text, when you select it, is all one entity, and I can actually change its shape by stretching the size of the paragraph. This is very useful, obviously, if you know that you're going to be typing multiple lines of text. When you are using the mtext command, the only way to change text height is to identify the text height before you start typing, or like I'm doing now, highlighting it and putting in a new height. So 0.25, for instance, would be title block height. So that's the difference between DText and mtext. Since in this example here, we are just going to be writing single lines of text, DText would be the best use of tool. So I'm going to type in DT, hover over the endpoint of the line, drag up about what I estimate the distance the text is above the line from the handout. So if you look at the handout, I estimate that that distance is about 1/16 of an inch. So I'm going to put in a distance of 0.0625. Look at your command line and notice that now it's asking for you to specify the height. If the height is not set to 0.125, set it to 0.125 now. And then you also need to pay attention that it's asking for rotation angle. Once you've answered those questions and you see the blinking cursor on your screen, then you can go ahead and type your sentence. So I just typed in center, put in a couple of spaces, and we're going to put in 10.000, and then in brackets we're going to fill in what the value would be if we were to convert the 10 inches to millimeters. So what I would do is calculate 10 times 25.4, which gives us an answer of 254 millimeters. I'd hit enter twice to get out of the DText, and I would repeat that step up here in the next line. So I'm going to type in DText again, hover over the endpoint of the line, drag up, put in a distance of 0.0625, accept the height, accept the rotation angle, and then type in my next row. And the conversion for this would be 9.313 times 25.4. So I'm just going to bring up the calculator and type in 9.313 times 25.4, and we get 236.550. So 236.550 is what I want to add in. Alright, so now that's what we would continue to do to create the text. Another way for us to do this that I think is a time saver is once we have one text line established, we can copy that line of text to each new line that we come to. So this is how we would go through that process. I'm going to type in CO for copy, pick the chain text that I've just written and hit enter. And for a base point, I want to pick the end point of the chain line that I've drawn. What this will allow me to do is pick the endpoints of all the other lines, and it will position the text in exactly the same distance and position above the line as the first one that I started with. Now all I need to do is use the edit command to update each line of text. The edit command, you don't have to repeat it. You just use it once, ED, pick the line of text you want to update, and change its contents. So this is the cutting plane. Its length is 6.875, and I'm going to let you guys figure out what the metric conversion would be for that. So we'll go to the next line. You notice we're still in the edit command, and I'm going to change this to dimension and extension. And you notice the value here is already showing up in the dimension line, so I'm going to leave that the way it is. And we just keep going until all of the text has been updated. Alright, now all the text has been updated, and you of course will have had all the metric values plugged in here as well. Now I want to revisit this dimension line right here, because there's a way for us to put in the correct text so it matches the text in the rest of the drawing, and also there's a way for us to put in the alternate dimensions. If you look at my command line here, if I type in the letter D and hit enter, this opens the Dimension Style Manager. So D is the alias to open the Dimension Style Manager. And just to review, LA is the alias to open the Layer Manager, and ST is the alias to open the Style Manager, Text Style Manager. So D is a very useful command as well, and we'll use it a lot once we get to about week 8 or 9 when we start applying dimensions to things. In the Dimension Style Manager, for now, we're going to use the standard dimension style, although when we start to create our own dimension styles, I will tell you I will not accept standard. But in order to not have to open that can of worms now, we're going to deal with standard. So what we want to do is modify what we have here. So I'm going to click on Modify. And what I want to do is change the text. I want the style of the text to be the same one I have used in the rest of the drawing, and I want the height of the text to match, and I also want to add alternate units. So if you look at the tabs, these tabs are organized so that it makes sense for us to go to the Text tab to make the changes to the text. So across from Text Style, I want that to be my MBC Romanesque text style that I created earlier today. And then for text height, I want that to be the 0.125. Next, we're going to skip all the other tabs here and go straight to alternate units. I want to add or display alternate units. Now, because we're using this drawing in inches, we started in inches, imperial units, as the instructions stated, then it's automatically going to assume we want to add millimeters as our alternate units, which is what this number is doing right here. It's a multiplier for all units of 25.4. So it takes whatever value the dimension is, multiplies it by 25.4, and puts that value instead next to the number. So when I hit OK here and hit close, you'll see that our dimensions here are appearing to be the same dimension style, text style rather, as the rest of my text, and then we have our alternate units shown. This part of the drawing is now complete, but I have added a second part, and that is involving a drawing that I want you to bring in and control the line types with. So I'm going to close down this drawing and open up the one that we're going to be referencing. So this is the drawing that I gave you in class if you were taking a class with me, and we have this drawing done in AutoCAD, but it's all in a single on a single layer, and you're going to have to organize this drawing and put it on the appropriate layers. So you should have this sheet in order to help you reference which type of line each one of these lines on your AutoCAD drawing is supposed to be, so you know which layer to put these lines on. So let's go back to the AutoCAD drawing. And we're going to use a command called insert. I for insert is I is the alias. When you use the insert command, if you have blocks inside your drawing, then a list of blocks will be shown here. Now, we don't have blocks in this drawing, but we can browse for another drawing file which can be inserted into this drawing as a block. So we're going to hit browse, and then if you go to the R drive and go to AEDD 105 and go into handouts, right there at the root of the handouts directory, you'll find a handout 2b no layers.dwg file. Highlight that file and you should recognize that it's the same drawing that we just looked at on the alphabet of lines. Hit the open, and then where it says specify on screen, just make sure that you remove the green checkbox next to the specify on screen under insertion point, scale, and rotation. When you hit OK, the drawing should appear just to the right of your lines that you have over here. We're going to use another command called explode. The alias is X. So type X at the command line, hit enter, highlight the drawing we just inserted and hit enter, and everything will turn black and white. Also, the dimension that we have here will kind of go fluey on you. And there is a way to fix that, but I'm not concerned about that. I would like you to just erase the dimension, and you can go ahead and erase the leaders that we're pointing to it as well. And that will be enough for you to just take these lines here and put them on the appropriate layers. So what you're going to do is reference this view here, and using this view, for instance, this arm right here is all phantom line because it's the alternate position that this handle is going to be in. So in the AutoCAD file, I want to select all the pieces of that handle in that alternate position like I'm doing here, and I want to put it on the phantom layer. These pieces here are also supposed to be on the object layer. So I select all of those lines and put them on the object. There are obviously a lot more lines that need to be on the object layer. I'm going to let you guys figure that out. So those would go onto the visible layer. Visible and object are the same thing. And if you want to see the line weights as you go, turn on the show hide line weights. And when you're done, all of the layers that you have here, all of the lines rather, should be on one of the layers that are the specific layers that you created. Nothing should be left on the 0 layer. The last step is for you to go in and fill in what each one of these line types actually is. So this would be Phantom. And then you've completed this assignment. And you can put it in the grade folder.